Garbutt going back with it. Gives it to Cecil Wonga. Red jumpers everywhere. He fires it to the middle. Tohu Harris. He looks to his left. Gronk. He goes to Hoffman. Hoffman. Tonamapia.
Pressure on Jared Hayne. He takes it comfortably. Steps one. Steps two. Steps three. He's away. Jared Hayne with a catch and a run. They're not going to catch him. All aboard. Tickets please for the Hayne train.
He's Houdini. He's Houdini. And he's put Gardner over. Daniel Gardner has scored. What about Andrew King? Put him in the circus. Put him somewhere. He's too good for this game.
You are now listening to the Molten Fantasy Sports Podcast.
Yes, g'day guys. Welcome back to the Molten Fantasy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Brain, the Supercoach Brain. And we're up to the second week now of what we'll call pre-drinks, which is, I think we're about an hour and 20 minutes away from game one. So I thought, why not hop on, have a chat with the Supercoach community and I guess give it an opportunity to answer some questions, have a little bit of a chat about final trades, captain's choices, and a few other interesting stats I thought I'd share to make everybody feel a little bit better if you didn't go with Nicho Hynes last week, which I didn't. It's been one of those weeks, I think, as well, where we've been tossing and turning around our trades. If you didn't start with Nicho Hynes, where are you going this week? Are you picking up Nicho Hynes and just swallowing your pride? Are you going in a different direction, looking to pick him up after the bye? There's a lot of questions here. So I'll try and give everybody a little bit of an insight, I guess, about my thought process on that. Because if you watch the Tin List Tuesday episode from Molten, you would have noticed that I was pretty set on bringing Nicho in, and I'm not so sure anymore. In fact, I don't think I'll bring him in this week. I think I'll wait until round 7. So plenty to touch on. Obviously, we can't do this without our sponsors, the Standard Squeeze. I've got my 4-in-1 right here. I've got a beer in it tonight, so you can actually use it as a bit of a stubby holder, can holder, beer holder. You can also use it as a bit of a thermos as well if you want to have your coffee in it in the morning. And you can chuck a tin in it in the afternoon. Happy days. It's a quality product. And obviously I've got my Standard Squeeze bottles in the back there that gives you the perfect pour as well. So go on to thestandardsqueeze.com, guys, and use the code MOLTEN15 if you want. And you'll get yourself 15% off at checkout. Definitely won't regret that. And before we move into the content, I'll quickly throw over to our sponsors over at Snap Fitness. Are you looking to make good on that New Year's resolution? Finding it hard to get into the gym due to not having anyone to look after the kids? Head on in and see Mark, Emma and the team at Snap Fitness Bendigo and Epsom for all your fitness needs. Both Epsom and Bendigo locations offer free child minding, which gives you the chance to head on in, get a workout done without worrying about the kids. All staff have working with children's checks and are super helpful with whatever your children need. Snap Fitness also offers a wide variety of classes such as strength and reformer Pilates, Tabata, strength classes, as well as one-on-one PT sessions. So head on in and say g'day to the guys at either gym and tell them the Molten Boys sent you. Thanks to Mark, Emma and the team at Snap Fitness. Great people. And if you're in country Victoria out in Bendigo or Epsom, definitely head in, hit the guys up. They'll look after you if you're looking to work on your fitness or you're just looking to get a bit jacked, for winter. Get that extra coat on. Guys, before we jump in, obviously, drop some comments. Let us know if you have any questions. I've got a couple of questions, I think, to answer on Twitter as well that we'll cover throughout the show. But yeah, drop the comments in. Let us know what your thoughts are for your trades this week. We've already got a couple of questions centered around Josh Schuster. So just so everybody's aware, Josh Schuster hasn't been named this week, which is a bit of a kick in the dick to everybody who went a little bit early on him. So if you're one of those people, commiserations for going early on Schuster. You won't, unfortunately, get your price rise this week, but there's a good chance he's back next week. I think Brew Jim's asked, he hopes Schuster only has a niggling injury, so it's only a quad cork for anybody not aware. So it looks like he should be good to go next week. Usually those things don't hang around too long, but corks can be quite limiting performance-wise. So definitely worth keeping an eye on Schuster there, but he should be back next week based on all things we've heard. So, all right, let's dig in. Let's get stuck into the content. Guys, so pre-drinks for round 5. what I wanted to do is put together, I guess, the most popular trades and the trade in and trade out options just right at the last minute, because obviously everybody's probably done all their trades by now. I don't know if you have. I have. And I'll talk through mine at the end, and I'll show you what my team looks like for round 5 and everything like that. But it looks like, obviously, Nicho Hynes is at the center of the majority of the trades this week, which I completely understand why people are going to Nicho based on that fear factor of, is he going to get 180 again? Is he going to get 150? Is he going to get 130? Can I captain him? Am I going to miss out? That fear of missing out is seriously real this week with Nicho Hynes, I think. I'll show you my perspective on it very soon. So Nicho, people are going Cam Murray, Tohu Harris, Adam Dewey, Ruben Cotter, Adam Reynolds. These guys are all coming out for Nicho Hynes. People, it's funny that Adam Dewey or Dewey to Josh Schuster is one of the third most popular trade this week, which I'm really surprised about considering Schuster's been out. He's not named. I think maybe people are just trying to free up the cash, but I would say that people are obviously getting Schuster in at 5'8", which means that you probably have to play Isaiah Katoa this week. I don't know whether that's a good option at all. I think, he could be good this week against the Dragons. Don't get me wrong. I think Katoa's got a real opportunity to stand up for this Dolphins team this week. So there's worse weeks to pick Katoa to play in your 17, but I don't know whether I feel comfortable relying on a Schuster Katoa combo at 5'8", unless you've got plans over the next 2 weeks to bring somebody else in, like a Dillbags or someone like that. So it looks like Payne Haas has made it in to the top 10 trades. So Cotter to Haas seems a very popular one. I've gone in a bit of a different direction this week, so I'll talk about that. But all the trade outs seem pretty much no-brainers. The Adam Dewey to Jonah Pezzett is a bit of a puzzling one for me, considering that Pezzett's got 1 week, right? He's got 1 more week to go. Obviously, Jerome Hughes comes straight back into this team, into the halfback position. But does that mean that Pezzett then drops back to the bench? Or does that mean Pezzett drops out of the side completely? I mean, I'd probably argue that Pezzett's done enough in the first 3 to 4 weeks that he's played to show us that he can play a utility role off the bench. But, I mean, are they going to play him in center or the wing? I mean, Harry Grant doesn't necessarily need somebody to come and cover him. And they've been using Bronson Garlick a fair bit off the bench as that hooker cover. But Harry Grant's been playing 80 minutes more often than not. So I'm struggling to understand why people are bringing in Jonah Pezzett this week. I don't think it's a good option. I don't think it's a downgrade option. Obviously, people are trying to free up the cash to go to Nicho Hynes, and I understand that, but ripping your team apart and leaving yourself very vulnerable in one position, whether it's 5'8", whether it's your reserve half, is recipes for disaster. So not a fan of the Pezzett move. Guys, keep dropping comments. Let me know whether you have any questions. I'll cover them as we go. Now, obviously, Nicho Hynes, the most traded in player this week. So 25,000 super coaches, 15% of trades are all to bring Nicho Hynes in. Yep, fair call. Jackson Ford seems to be the second at 12,000, so about half of the amount of trades, Jackson Ford, compared to Nicho Hynes. Then we've got Pezzett, 10,000 people bringing in Pezzett. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. But, hey, each to their own. Maybe it'll split up the competition a bit. I understand he'll probably make 100K, but I mean, you can easily lose as much as he gains very quickly when he goes back to the bench. 8,000 people still bringing in Josh Schuster this week. I think that's probably out of desperation, thinking that you can probably just free up the cash for Nicho. Also, not a fan of going on Schuster this week. If you didn't get Schuster last week, I don't see the point in going this week when he's not playing. You might have to. I prefer Pezzett than Schuster. Obviously, they play a different position, but you've got the jewel in Isaiah Katoa to play around with there to mix up positions. So, would definitely prefer that. But yeah, Schuster, if you can wait until next week and slot him in as a downgrade in your 2RF, that's what I would be doing with Schuster. Payne Haas, yep, happy with that. I'm not going with Payne Haas. I'm going with another front row forward as an upgrade to Cotter. I'll talk about soon, and I'll explain why. Reece Walsh still coming in, 656,000. He'll be 700K next week. He's looking quality, isn't he? And they're playing the Tigers this week. So honestly, Reece Walsh could score anywhere upwards of 100 this week. Zach Hosking, people are going early on Zach Hosking, 458K, nearly 5,000 super coaches bringing in Zach Hosking. I mean, we've heard through the grapevine or through the week that Ivan Cleary has mentioned that Luke Garner has some niggles or injuries. It's a rib cartilage injury by the sounds of things, which can be quite limiting performance-wise, so we need to keep in mind. So I'm not quite sure whether he just misses this week or whether he'll miss future weeks as well. But Does that mean there's a bit of risk there that Hosking maybe doesn't continue to keep that position? I'd say he probably did enough last week to show that he deserves an 80-minute edge role, but is he going to get that straight away in his first game back from New South Wales Cup? Don't know. I'm not sure. Not confident enough to go early on him this week. I'll wait until next week and see what this week looks like, and whether Garner is named next week as well. I think that's worth looking at. Ruben Garrick, number 8 most traded in player this week. 3,300 people have brought him in. Number 9, Eliezer Katoa, just a little bit less than Garrick. He's at 576k. I don't think you've missed the boat on him, but I think you're close. So I'd argue that maybe this is the last week you probably want to get him before he gets into the kind of early to mid 600s and he becomes there becomes some second better options to him like a Hosking. And Lockie Miller now taking the goal kicking up from last week. So I'm a big fan of Lockie Miller. He's shown us this year that it doesn't matter if Pong is playing or not. He's going to grab the game by the balls and do his work. So a little bit of, like I said on Tuesday, Teddy 2.0 about Lachlan Miller. So 670k, you're paying a premium for him. But if you're confident that he can continue the form that he's in, all for it. Most traded out, Cam Murray, 6,400. There's a bit of dispute on Twitter about this one. I'm not quite sure whether people are all aboard the sell Cam Murray train. I am. I feel like passing before the line and playing that link man role, he's making a lot of tackles, but the concern for me is that he's only taking about 6 or 7 runs a game. So not a huge fan of that. And he's going to bleed some cash this week and probably next week. Adam, people are going on Adam Dewey. I don't know whether I'm not going on Adam Dewey. I'm not trading him out. I'll keep him there. I think the longer that he plays, the better he'll get at fullback as well. It seems like Tim Sheens is pretty set on Dewey playing fullback potentially for the rest of the year, but God knows what Tim Sheen's going to do. The bloke's all over the shop. Sam Walker, people are trading him to Nicho. That's a no-brainer at 614,000. Tanner Boyd goes out as well. Luke Garner, these are all pretty stock standard options. Ruben Cotter's not playing this week. Tohu Harris has been named for the Warriors, so the worst thing about this one is that he plays the end of the weekend, so he plays on Sunday. You've got to wait all the way to Sunday to decide whether you want to go to him. But I guess the option that we have with Tohu Harris is you could potentially go down to Jackson Ford, who plays on the same team. So if you've got him in the 2RF or you've got a dual there, you've got that option to go down to Jackson Ford. So that might be the only play, or go down to a Bulldogs player. Surely everybody has Preston right now. They'd have to. So Trindle, people are trading out Trindle. Honestly, I'd probably even just hold Trindle for a week unless he's your ticket to Nicho Hynes, because he steps on the field and probably makes you 20 or 30k. Just sell him next week. Adam Reynolds goes up to Nicho Hynes, and obviously Latrell Mitchell. I don't know whether I'm on the sell Latrell Mitchell train anymore. I was on Tuesday, but the more that I look at his stats, I think he steps up in big games, and they've got Melbourne this week. That's a monster game, and they're playing at home. So I think Latrell could honestly have a massive game this weekend. He always seems to just kind of step up out of nowhere, this guy. And, if he has a few quiet games, people stick into him a little bit in the media, and then he goes, well, screw you blokes. I'm going to show you what I'm about. So, yeah, that's a gutsy one, Latrell. And, if you're going Latrell down to Reece Walsh, I'd probably advise against that to chase cash, because I think, honestly, Latrell could score upwards of 100 this week. The Storm just aren't who they used to be. All right, so popular captains for this week. Guys, Nicho Hynes, captain. Everybody that's bringing him in is captaining him. It kind of makes sense. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't get him this week if you didn't believe that he was captain worthy. Tommy Turbo becomes the second most popular captain at 18.2%. Harry Grant, 8%. Nathan Cleary, 7%. Reece Walsh, 5.5%. I understand the Walsh pick, and I'm all for Nathan Cleary. Going straight C on a Friday night game is big balls, and you probably got your VC on a Parramatta player tonight, or a Roosters player like Teddy or something like that. I don't see Tedesco in the top 7 VC options this week, but I see Jermaine Hopgood in there, so maybe that's probably the play for a lot of people that are captaining Nathan Cleary. And then we've got Payne Haas and Ruben Garrick as well that round out the 6 and 7 for top captain options for this week. Vice captain, Tommy Turbo, very, very popular vice captain option for people that are obviously going with Nicho Hynes as their captain. Nathan Cleary, also a very popular vice captain option. And that's, as you can see on the screen, that's what I'm doing this week. I'm going vice captain Nathan Cleary, captain Tommy Trbojevic. As you can see, I don't have Nicho Hynes in my team at this point. And I'm bloody scared about it, let me tell you. I am very, very worried that I could see 2 weeks in a row where Nicho Hynes just puts me to the sword and gets 150 and I end up 330, 660 points behind those people that captained him. So that is a real risk this week if you're not going with Nicho. But logically for me, I just can't justify going with a guy for 1 week, even if he scores 120 this week. The reality is that the other person that I'm getting, I could easily match 120 over 2 weeks with this player. So that's my thinking there, and I'll grab him in round 7. That's an automatic lock for me. I'm going to make sure I have the cash for Nicho Hynes round 7 before his price rise. Imagine getting a bloke at 902k that you could get and still make cash. He could end up over $1 million after his price rise. All right, moving on. So let's talk about the Nicho Hynes and Ruben Garrick, because that's pretty much the main question this week is Nicho Hynes versus Ruben Garrick. Who do I get? You know, some people are going with Ruben Garrick. He's been a big centre wing target, CTW target for the last couple of weeks. People wanted him in for a very long time, and they've held off. Obviously, Manly had the buy in round 2, so a lot of people moved a little bit later on Ruben. And for those of you that went on Nicho Hynes last week, full credit to you. You've absolutely nailed it, smashed it out of the park with that. For those of you going this week, the one thing to consider is you get this week's score against the Warriors, which honestly could be anything. He could go out and get 150. The last time he played at PointsBet Stadium against the Warriors, he scored 185. So I'm very concerned. But the logic, I mean, my surname is Brain. I can't go into Supercoach with emotion. I just can't do it to myself. I need to be logical. A lot of the reasons and the decisions that I make around Supercoach come from statistics and they come from logic. So chasing Nicho based on emotion just doesn't make sense to me. So that's why I've changed my mind a little bit throughout this week. So Nicho Hynes, let's just say he gets 120 this week. Next week he's got a buy. You're getting 0 from him. Yeah, and you're getting a guy that's 900k sitting on your bench. So what happens if you go Ruben Garrick at 748k, I think he is this week, 770. You've got an extra 130k there to play around with for another upgrade that will probably better your team, as opposed to getting Nicho and ripping your team apart. So going Ruben Garrick meant that I could keep Reed Marnie this week. He's probably locked in to get me 60 as a worst case score, 50 maybe. So I can get Ruben Garrick and I can also keep Reed Marnie as one of my reserves, as opposed to going with Nicho Hynes this week. So let's just say Ruben Garrick in round 5, he's versing the Knights, mind you, which is what was another really big decision for me is do I, who do I go with instead of Nicho? And that Knights matchup against Greg Marju's wing is probably the juiciest matchup of the weekend, especially for a quality finisher like Ruben Garrick and a team like Manly that are on fire at the moment. So Ruben Garrick, round 5 versus Knights, he gets 100. Round 6 versus Panthers, let's say he gets 60, right? There's 160. You're 40 points ahead, right? And then also you're 40 points ahead just when we look at Nicho versus Garrick, but then you add that extra player or that extra upgraded player that you could have had with the extra 130k difference between Ruben Garrick and Nicho Hynes. So you need to also remember that anybody that's getting Nicho captains in this week. So even if he gets 100, they get 200 points from him. You've also got an opportunity to captain 2 other players over the next 2 weeks that could be a pod opportunity for you against Nicho. So it's not just as simple as looking at Nicho Hynes versus Ruben Garrick this week. There's a lot more to it. You're looking at Nicho Hynes versus Ruben Garrick and another captain option and then another upgraded player. So something to consider for those of you that are looking at Nicho, that have jumped on Nicho early. I completely understand that the fear factor is there. It's a big FOMO week for everybody who don't have Nicho. I was sitting in exactly the same boat on Tuesday night, but I've flipped a little bit and I'm going to go with Ruben Garrick. So I wanted to actually give everybody a little bit of an understanding on just how close this competition is. Because, I mean, when you look at yourself, I'm sitting at 29,800th or something like that in the rankings, right? Which is pretty ordinary. But I was sitting in a very similar spot last year. But let's have a look at the first place. They've got 4,946 points, right? So first place, they're well ahead. They're doing pretty well. Then we look at top 1,000. So the person in the 1,000th or 1,001 place, Tony from Lucky Bay, he's on 4,544. So he's 400 points behind first place there. The difference between where I'm sitting at 4,184 to 4,544, I am honestly only about 360 points away from top 1,000. So you can go from 30,000th to top 1,000 this week if you find a really good pod captain choice. Everyone's going turbo. If you've got the balls to go Garrick this week and he goes large and gets 130 and Nicho gets 70, you could honestly find a pretty big gap. There's a 200-point gap right there. Just playing it like that. So, and then obviously when we look at the top 5,000, I'm only about 220 points out of the top 5,000, and I'm only 160 points away from the top 10,000. So that's just how close this competition is at the moment. We're only in round 5, guys. It's not round 22. There's no need to panic about your rankings because you will climb up the ranks very quickly with a few good captaincy choices. And obviously, if you're building bank and you're building up your team quality, you're building up some upgrades, some of those cash cows that are fattening up, and you're moving them to the premium options, you're going to be in a great spot. And just remember, the buys are very tough to navigate this year. So those teams that have gone really hard early on and are going to go really hard on trades and boosts might find themselves in a pretty tough position when we get to round 13 and we've got about 7 rounds worth of buys to contend with and state of origin and restings and everything else. So very, very interesting stats there. I actually didn't realize how close I was, but worth keeping in mind for anybody who's panicking about where they're at right now. There's plenty of time left to play catch up to those people that went hard early. So this is how I'm looking this week, guys. I've gone Ruben Cotter out, Murata Niokore out, and Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow. So those 3 come out for me. I was a bit apprehensive about trading out Hamiso because they've got the Dragons as a matchup this week, and I really like that matchup for him. But I could not turn down the opportunity to get Joseph Tarpany, Jackson Ford, and Ruben Garrick this week. So I've gone in a different direction. I haven't gone Nicho. So instead of going with Reed Marnie to Nicho Hines this week, I've gone with Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow to Ruben Garrick. So I feel like that's going to be a little bit left field. I feel like people aren't going to be doing that move too much. But honestly, I don't want to rip my team apart. Drop a guy like Reed Marnie who could score well this week against the Warriors. I don't want to rip my team apart like that and trade a premium player to get Nicho in when next week I'm going to be sitting with one less premium player in my squad and a guy that costs 900K on the bench. So that's as simple as it is. I've got 60K left in the bank. Next week, I want to get Dylan Brown if I can find the cash for a downgrade. And then the week after, I'll make sure I have enough cash to get my boy Nicho, because you can't pass on him in round 7. He should be 100% owned in round 7. Simple as that. So my team, guys, obviously got Harry Grant and Reed Marnie up top at hooker. Reed Marnie's got the reserve on him. I've got Tarpany in this week with Christian Welch, Stefano Utuikamanu as a reserve. A lot of players, a lot of people, a lot of super coaches have a lot of Titans players in their team. They might have Tanner Boyd. They might have David Fafita. They've got Alefiana Camperera. So you're sitting pretty tricky, I guess, finding some good quality 4 bench reserves this week. So had to reserve Stefano this week, which I'm fine with. I'm completely fine with that. He'll probably get me 40 to 50, which is fine. Jermaine Hopgood, Wilton, and Jackson Ford in the second row, with Jacob Preston getting a reserve in the 2RF. Nathan Cleary as vice captain this week. I honestly think that Nathan Cleary could go massive Friday night against the Raiders. He averages 83 against the Raiders in his career. And the Raiders without Jack Whiten could be a complete disaster. I think it could be quite tricky for them to keep up with the Panthers. And it's only a matter of time before the Panthers come good. So I'm feeling Cleary for a bit of a bounce back. People are writing him off. People are trading him out. He's averaging 56. Definitely not what you paid for, but he's very, very due. So I'm back on that. Adam Dewey in at the 5'8". I'm not using a half or a 5'8 reserve this week. Isaiah Katoa, as much as I like the matchup, much better options in my squad right now. My centre wing's actually looking pretty good. Now that I brought Ruben Garrick in, I've got Garrick, Carraz, Holmes, and Taruva playing this week. I think Taruva could have a really good game against the Raiders as well, that right edge defense. So that's my centre wing. And then I've got the captain on Tommy Trebojevic, and I've got Reece Walsh as my 4th reserve. So that's how I'm looking this week. I'm actually really liking my team. And I think what we'll do moving forward next week is I'll probably find a downgrade to get Schuster in. I will need to generate some cash next week. So there's a potential that I could trade Teague Wilton out next week. He's done a job for me. I could go down to a guy like Schuster and free up about 300K. And then that'd allow me to go Dewey up to Dylan Brown against the West Tigers next week. And then the week after that, I could downgrade a cash cow, or I'm actually not quite sure how I'll play that really, but I could downgrade a Christian Welch to Tino's brother from the Titans, Isaac Fasul-Maliawi. So that's an option as well, just depending on how Christian Welch goes this week. So I've got options to find the cash for Nicho. It's just a matter of how I play it. So that's me moving forward. And lastly, squeeze of the week. Squeeze of the week this week to win a combo pack from the standard squeeze. So that's one of these bad boys. So you get 3 in them to get yourself the perfect shot. So all you do is just squeeze it and it pops the spirits straight up into the top of the chamber. So you get a combo pack. Every single week we're doing a squeeze of the week as well. So worth noting here, squeeze of the week this week is to pick the over-under on these 4 players. Tommy Turbo over under 86. Nicho Hynes over under 100. Nathan Cleary over under 84 and Payne Haas over under 78. So if you get all 4 of them right and we have a tie and a lot of people get all 4 of those correct, then we'll be going with the person that posts the quickest. So make sure to keep an eye on our Facebook and our Instagram and our Twitter. All that post, exactly what you're looking at right now, is going to go straight onto those pages very soon after I hop off here. So the quicker you get your guesses in for over-under on these guys, the better chance you're going to have to go in the running to win the standard squeeze combo pack, courtesy of the standard squeeze. Good blokes over there as well. Ash Sutton and the boys over there are quality, and we thank them for supporting the podcast. Man, this solo podcasting, I tell you, it's tough. Tough work. Looking forward to Maddie coming back. I'm sure everybody's looking forward to Maddie coming back for the comedic relief as well. All right. So let's answer some questions. I see a few questions coming in the chat. So really good opportunity now, guys, to get your questions in if you have any, and I'll start working my way through them. Harry Taylor Byrne is asking last 2 reserves between Alamotti, Utuikamanu, Isaiah Katoa, Preston and Ford. I would be saying Preston and Ford, mate. So Jacob Preston, he's looking like he's getting 80 minutes on that right edge. I really like Jacob Preston this year, and against the Warriors, against their left edge defense, I mean, he's going to be running at Jackson Ford. So that could be interesting. And Tamari Martin's out for the Warriors, so he's going to be running at Ronald Volkman on that left edge. So that's worth keeping in mind. I think Jacob Preston's a play this week, and I also think Jackson Ford is a play this week as well. So I would definitely be going with those 2, mate. But again, you can't really go wrong with Stefano either. And Isaiah Katoa, if you're stuck playing him, there could be worse options in your team, I think. So I'm fine with that. Pass it to the Wenger. I like it. Thoughts on MILF? Yeah, look, I mean, he's going to get some extended time now, isn't he? He's kind of fallen into a pretty lucky situation with Sean O'Sullivan out with that pec tear. So he's going to be back in about 12 weeks. I want to watch on Milford again. It's his second game. You don't need to go on him early. Get another watch. And obviously, you want to watch him against a bad team and see whether he can do anything. And the Dragons are the worst that you can find this year so far. So let's have a look on Milford this week. I don't know whether you need to go. I don't know whether it's smart to go on Milford this week, this early. You can go next week. So if he performs this week, again, remember it's the Dragons. I mean, we've shown that in the past 5-6 years, Milford's been pretty much irrelevant when it comes to Supercoach. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm not a huge fan on Milford. Mick Delaney, Mickey Dell, the host of the AFL Molten podcast, has asked, can we wait till next week to bring in Nicho, or is he a must-get this week? You want to wait till the week after, Mick? He's got a bye next week. And that's, I think, the reason why a lot of people are not going with Nicho this week is because of that bye next week. You end up with no points, like I mentioned, and a 900k player on your bench doing nothing for you. So there's a good chance, even if he gets 100 this week, the people that went and faded him are probably going to be in a better position in 2 weeks' time. Everybody that went last week will be ahead of the game. Anybody who missed last week, you probably just need to swallow your pride, cop it on the chin, and wait. So that's the logical option. I feel like FOMO's pretty real. Anthony Gridley asks, who to captain, Hynes, Cleary, Turbo, or Garrick? If you got Nicho, you probably need to captain him, don't you, against the Warriors? It could be anything. Warriors away from home are definitely a less strong team in comparison. And we know the Sharks are quality at PointsBet. They're quality at home. So I'd be going with Nicho if you have those. I do like Cleary this week as well, though. I would be probably... If I had Hynes, I originally was going to go Turbo VC, Hynes C. I'm going with VC Cleary C Turbo just because I don't have Hynes. I feel like maybe Garrick could be a pod captain option if you've got big enough nuts. That might be if you don't really care and you just want to shoot up the rankings and find a pod option, Garrick could be the play. Could be the play this week. Nathan Beaches asks, Nichols to Lemuelu, maybe. Feel like Chance Nickel Klokstad won't have any more price rises. Lemuelu could be a good buy. Yes, I agree. I agree with that. I think Lemuelu is a really good buy this week. I feel like we had a chance to watch again last week and see what that looked like at the Dolphins. But the Dolphins have the Dragons this week. And honestly, if there's a week to play your Dolphins players, it's this one. We saw what Nicho did to them last week. They just looked bloody atrocious last week. Those Dragons, that defense was honestly deplorable. So I would, Lemuelu is a great option, I think, this week. And the fact that he's a center wing and he's also been confirmed to be getting dual center wing 2RF next week by Supercoach HQ, I feel like that's a really good move this week if you don't have any other fires to put out or any other problems. Tyler Sutherland has asked, got Tohu, should I trade or keep? Just depends, mate, how many other problems you have in your team. I know some people that are keeping him and holding him thinking he's a 50-50 chance. So they've come out, Andrew Webster's come out during the week and said that Tohu Harris is a 50-50 chance to play this weekend, which I don't like 50-50 chances logically. And when we look at the numbers, I don't know whether I'd trust a 50-50 chance to play, especially with a guy like Tohu, but we know he's going to be chomping at the bit to get out there. So if you've got other problems and you can actually have maybe a Bulldogs player or another Warriors player in your reserves that you can quickly change the reserve to at the last minute, that might be the play. I would recommend, if you're going to keep Tohu, to make sure that you have that option to flick that reserve to another bench player, so you don't end up with an automatic emergency non-player in your team. So that's how I'd play it. Tohu, if you're going to go to someone like Jackson Ford, you can leave that trade right to the last minute. Sean Clark, I hope Hines has a complete stinker this week. You and me both, mate. You and me both. I really do hope that he goes sub 70, and I would consider that a stinker. Especially with the majority of people captaining him that have brought him, the 20-odd thousand super coaches that have brought him in. It would be a pod play, and it is a pod play, to not get Nicho Hines this week, which is why I'm doing it. You don't win Supercoach, and you don't go up the rankings by following the majority. You've got to make decisions based on your gut. You've got to make decisions based on the logic that you've been given and the statistics. And that's the direction I'm going this week. So I'm with you, Shawnee. I'm with you. Harry Taylor Byrne has asked, aren't the Bulldogs playing the Cowboys? Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. I got that matchup wrong. Regardless, I still like it. 6:15, it's the last game of the week. So Warriors play the Sharks. You are correct. Luke, really considering putting the VC on Teddy and the C on Cleary, even though I have Hines. Well, I mean, there's a little bit of a blanket rule, Supercoach-wise, that you never captain or vice captain a Thursday night game. But again, those people that went on Hopgood in, I think it was round 2, were very happy with their Thursday night VC option. So I think Teddy, I think a stat to know about Teddy against Parramatta is that fullbacks are averaging 90 Supercoach points a game against Parramatta Eels this season. So they've also, I think there was a statistic that said that they were leaking about 7 tries to fullbacks this season, which is 3 more tries than any other position against any other team in the comp. So really interesting stat there. I like Teddy as a VC, especially because it's a very pod VC. A lot of people have traded out Teddy. So I'm a big fan of that. If you can do that, Luke, I'd be taking that option personally. I just don't have Tedesco in my team. Andy Chu. Hey, mate, how are you? Thanks for hopping on. Brought in Nicho last week instead of a gun center wing, and now debating between trading Cam Murray to bring in Garrick or trading Jeremiah Nanai to bring in Karaz. Yeah. Yeah, that's a bit of a tricky one, isn't it? Because, I mean, Karaz is up against the Cowboys. They're not that great. They haven't been great all year. Cam Murray, I'm not really liking Cam Murray. If you can do Cam Murray to Garrick, that's my preference, especially with the Knights matchup that Garrick has this week against Greg Marju, who has been known to have a lot of defensive deficiencies. That would be the play for me this week, I think. Yes, Nanai won't play for you and he's suspended and he'll miss a couple of games, but I think Cam Murray down to Garrick is the play this week if you can make that happen. And you've already got Nicho. And if you've got Nicho and Garrick in your team, you're set this week. They're the 2 most popular kind of players that are debated this week. Minamoto asking, is Jesse Ramian the best center right now? No. So he scored 120 odd last week and had a great week. I don't know. He's definitely not the best center wing. I think center wing wise, you want to get Ruben Garrick in because not only does he have that fullback duel, you're not going to play him at fullback. You've got the flexibility for trades. But Garrick is the play. If you're going to get anybody this week, Garrick is the play. And then if you don't have Carraz, I'd be trying to get Carraz before he goes over 700. Or he's gone over 700 now. So that you might be reaching for Carraz if you don't have him. And then obviously Val Holmes is starting to drop in price. So the reality is, I mean, the Cowboys still have some half decent matchups. You might be able to pick up Valentine Holmes at a bit of a discount. I haven't got his price in front of me right now, but I reckon he'd be mid 600s, I would say. My internet's slow out. 667 he is at the moment. He's averaging 61.5 in a team that looks dog shit. So I'm not against people picking up Val Holmes as a little bit of a play. If other people are trading him out, I'd be going against the grain and picking him up because they've still got some really nice games coming up. The Cowboys, as much as they've looked ordinary, they've got the Bulldogs this week. Then they've got the Dolphins, the Warriors, the Newcastle Knights. So up to round 8, the Cowboys are still looking good and they've still got the favourable matchup, and Val Holmes should score well still. So he scored 3 of his 4 games, he scored above 63. So you can't really ask more for a centre wing. So I would be going with those 3 as the 3 premium centre wings this year. And also we've got to keep an eye on Greg Marju as well. I'd probably be looking at Greg, if he doesn't let in 4 tries this week and get dropped, Greg Marju next week is going to be primed to be able to be picked up at 580k, and he'll probably have pretty close to a negative break even. It'll be a little bit of Jason Carraz about it, I think. He'll be one of those guys you need. And then obviously Hosking next week as well, depending on what happens with Luke Garner. So I think that's probably the way to play it. Doesn't look like we have any other questions, guys, and we always wanted to keep these podcasts nice and short. I appreciate everybody hopping on. All the best with this week. Let's hope that we can see some green arrows. And honestly, if you didn't pick up Nicho Hynes this week like me, let's death ride him on Sunday, and let's just hope that he goes sub 100 so that I can sleep on Sunday night. I might not even watch the game, to be completely honest with you. But guys, that'll do me. Pre-drinks are done. The game starts in about 30 minutes or 40 minutes or so. We've just had team lists come through. I'll quickly just touch on that very, very quick before. So Joey Manu's still out. Junior Bolo's still out. It doesn't look like any changes have been made to these lineups. No changes to the Para versus Roosters game tonight. So no quick changes you need to make for your Supercoach teams, guys. All the best for the weekend. We'll be back again for the Sunday session after the final game on Sunday to talk about the round 5 in NRL Supercoach and all things Supercoach from there. I've been your host, Nathan Brain. You've been listening to the Molten Fantasy Sports Podcast. Thanks for hopping on. We'll see you Sunday. Good luck.